not to date myself, I'm fucking 35, people. So back then, all you had was like posters around polls, or like, you know, maybe if you're lucky and you went onto like Yahoo or like web crawler and looked up hardcore punk
Web
Winnipeg.
crawler? What's that?
There you go. You know? Shout outs to web crawler.
So, welcome back. This is the Scoped Exposure Podcast. I'm sitting down with the legend himself, Mr. Adam Dyson. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for asking me to ramble and do what I am very bad at, but also kind of good at, which is just talking for extended periods of time.
Yeah, a double-edged sword
stuff.
in a way.
Yeah. Digging a pit, I think is what most people call it. Yeah.
This podcast is already off to a great start. We're here in your
luxurious
the Dyson dungeon.
Yeah, if you want to call it. Yeah, that's about right. You know, if you're watching the video of it, I swear there's more here than just the radiator behind me. But you know,
but not much else.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah,
you know? Hey,
yeah.
you know.
And we're sipping on some
it feels like
cherry
home.
lime LaCroix.
Yeah, it's
And I just want to plug this as well, just because I'm like a big Bev guy and I haven't had this yet, so it's very good.
Describe it for the people.
Well, I like how you said it's like the Cadillacs of the LaCroix line.
Which is to say, not too flashy, but classic.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to try and add to that because that's already perfect.
Yeah.
So for like the 2 or 3 people who are watching or listening to this who don't know who you are, can you give me just like your elevator, like this is who I am?
Oh, that's awful. Well, my name's Adam. I'm a 35-year-old man who is somehow still involved in the hardcore scene. I got into it relatively late, if we're being honest. I probably got into it when I was like 17.
Oh, okay.
There was no real like, you know, I knew of it growing up, but then like I really dived into the hardcore scene, like actually going to shows locally, realizing that they're local around like 17 or whatever. But yeah, 35, a miserablest, angry, fan of debauchery, been known to increase the grease here and there. Yeah, I don't know.
Why does Increase the Grease sound like a really cool song name?
Well, it's a mantra. It's a way of life.
Okay.
You know, sections of my life, I think, I have like kind of a mode or a mantra, and like, you know, whereas let's say 2010 to about 2015 would have been the Live in the Shadows, Die by the Swords era.
Sure.
The shades and the blades. And then yeah, Increase the Grease has been kind of a kind of like it's like Hot Girl Summer, but for gross guys. You know?
Great.
It's also just taken from Increase the Peace for anyone who knows about tensions with the gang community in the early 90s for Southern California.
Oh, I see.
So, you know,
I think
it says Increase the Peace at the end of Boys in the Hood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we should throw Increase the Grease on the end of a new Withdrawal song.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Withdrawal, how about you give me you guys are a 10-year-old band.
Yeah.
Is it 11 now?
Might even be 12.
It's
probably rolling up on 12 somehow.
Yeah.
Because it was like 2008. We played our first show, and we did like, we were practicing for a couple of months before we started playing.
Okay.
And like, so it would have been before like it was January that we played our first show, but it was before then that we were jamming and like.
So you guys are almost in the teenage years.
Yeah, troublesome teens. You know, that's when we become moody teenagers,
Right.
as opposed to disgusting old men.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, because like we jammed for a little bit before we kind of really got going, and we were jamming with because like, you know, we were jamming with like a different drum. This is like Mike joined about 2010, 2012. You kind of filtered
Mike's
in and out.
in the room here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say hi, Mike.
Hey, what's up?
You have to probably.
Good one, man. What's happening? But yeah, like so like our original like way we started was like me and Joel wanted to start a band after Ramirez, and we started practicing with our buddy Ryan Teeney on drums. And there was actually a little bit of time where we were going to get Tom Elvers on drums because we heard he drummed.
Oh,
and we sent him like some Ringworm
photographer
songs.
Tom.
Yeah. Who's an amazing guitarist and a great drummer too. And I don't know why it really kind of because we practiced with him like I think once at this old jam space, and then but then we were really starting to riff with this guy Ryan Teeney, who used to drum in Hollow Ground, plays in some bands in Toronto, and there's recordings somewhere. Like I got recordings somewhere of these songs that never got done, but we did like maybe like 3 or 4 jams with him, and then he was like, I don't know if I want to play like, hardcore or metal stuff. Like, I just want to play some stuff where it's kind of just like rocking mid-tempo stuff like Cancer Bats. And like when he said that, me and Joel were like, oh crap. Like that's, no offense to the Cancer Bats because they're buddies of ours and they're sick, but like we're a fast part band, obviously, right? We just wanted to play fast parts with metal riffs. But like we didn't want to do like the da-da-da-da-da-da kind of tempo stuff. So then, then we got, then Jeff was kind of done with Hollow Ground, and I think First Strike was kind of stopping for a bit, and we just kind of started then, and then it's been 12 years, some of them good since then.
Right. So. And kind of how you were saying, like there's been a plethora of different members of the Withdrawal gang.
Yeah, kind of. I was thinking about that today, actually, because like overall, it's been pretty solid for a while. Mike's been putting in work on bass or guitar for a bit since like 2010, 2012. He was on like the split that we did with Young and in the Way. He wrote a couple of he wrote Human Garbage pretty much. And yeah, there's been some guys here and there too. Some stuck around for a while. Some didn't. Some were kind of like
How long was Cody playing with you guys?
Cody was playing for a couple of years. Cody Dewald from Mortality Rate and Serration. He is an awesome guy. And that's another thing. Oddly enough, before we were even talking about this, like today I was thinking about him because he's out in Europe right now just killing it. And like I saw a bunch of people just like talking about how awesome Serration was doing right now in Europe. And I was like, yeah, Cody's awesome. And like, what a great guy. Like, I can't believe
pumping his tires right now.
This is strange for me because normally I spend all my time shitting on stuff rather than being nice.
We're capturing the rare occurrence.
Yeah, this Cody's one of those guys where it's like, if I hate 99 people out of 100, he's that one where I fucking love the guy. Could not spend enough time with him. He's just so great. Every time I see him, he's the funniest guy. And but like he's an awesome drummer. But he was playing with us for a bit. But it was like he was also like living in Calgary at the time, and we couldn't really play any local shows. He'd have to fly out to Winnipeg, and we'd like practice in my basement on like electronic drums for like a couple of days or like a week before we left for tour.
Right.
And I feel like it was kind of like hard to really kind of keep that going. So like, it got to the point where it's like, we got to get a guy kind of locally. And I think like Jeff rejoined the band around then. But no, it worked out great for Cody rather than getting stuck with us like an anchor around him. Now he's doing awesome stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, it's definitely hard. Like some bands, live in different states. Like, that's a classic thing with my band right now is that I'm living in Calgary and I flew out here like a couple of days ago to play our show last night. Like jammed that we were supposed to jam the day before and then the day of, but then our drummer couldn't do that, so we were like jamming the day of and then heading to the gig and playing the gig.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Sounds like a familiar scenario. And here's the thing. It's like, I truly believe that if you're I hate not to say professional level musician, but if you know your ass from your elbow, then, and you have your head on straight, like if someone was like, we haven't practiced for a bit, or like, we haven't like full band jammed for a bit. And like, even with like, I bet you anything, we could get everyone in the room and be like, play Lambs right now and we'll fucking do it. No problem. You know what I mean? Like if you know your songs, you should know your songs. Like when you get like the guy playing who you're like, oh, I haven't even touched my instrument in a month, man. I don't know how to play those songs anymore. It's like, are you kidding me? Like,
it's very muscle memory to a degree.
Yeah, it's muscle memory. And it's just like, you should be able to, listen to the song and be like, oh, got it. I remember, like, so I say that and like, but then at the same time, every now and then when we play live, we'll pull out like a real deep cut I don't know, about like 60% of the way through the song, and I'm like, what the fuck are the lyrics to Luminous Sanctuary? It's like, again, but then it's muscle memory and you just keep going. So
Yeah, I think that, the first time that Locked In jammed after I moved, it was like, just playing through it. And then it's like, well, haven't played that riff in like 7 months. But then you just kind of push through it and,
It's hardcore. It's not rocket science.
Yeah,
You're not playing like Mahavishnu Orchestra, psych rock or anything like that, or big scales or anything like that.
Yeah,
so.
truly.
Yeah.
So speaking about Withdrawal, what do you think has been the thing that's kept the band going for 10 years plus?
I think probably being stubborn. It's certainly not success. Because like I think if we cared about stuff like if we cared about like being cool, or making money playing in a band, or like whatever, like I don't think we'd be a band, because we'd be like, well, it's whatever. But I think me and Joel have been like around since the start, and Mike's been the other one who's kind of had like the same drive as we do, right, where we want to just keep playing music, and it's like you want to keep putting out music if it's good. Like if we were putting out stuff that was garbage, I'd be like, well, we're done.
Right.
Or if it's like, but, so I guess it's probably like a stubborn obsession with music and hardcore, and the combination of metallic riffs and hardcore idiocy. And, no, I mean, it's just, I still like doing it. I love it. There's, like I said, I'm 35. We've been doing this band for like 12 years almost. And then like, I've been going to shows for another 5 years or whatever, or 6 or 7 years before then. And it's like, it never gets boring to me. If given the option of like, oh, do you want to go to the cabin with your wife and kids, or do you want to go play a show? I'm like, oh, I'd rather play a show. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's a fucking weird thing. 'Cause every now and then I see people who are like, I don't know. It's like, I know I've got my priorities fucked up in life, but it's like, well, you can't turn around a sailboat, you know what I mean, that quickly. It doesn't just dart around a corner. So I think I've already set a course, and I think I'm kind of stuck on a path where I'm not changing up my life now. What would I do? Would I be like, oh, I guess I'm going to start an indie rock band now, or like, well, I don't really feel like going to hardcore shows
Dyson
anymore.
Experience.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I don't know. I guess, like I said, it's a lot of it's being stubborn. Like anytime you see like, anytime you see bands break up that are like, you see it all the time on Twitter, where you see a band post this big long rambling note that they had on their iPhone note, and it says like, we'll never forget the times we had, and the times we shared, and the places we've been, and the people who have supported this band. Thank you so much for everything. We're going to play one more show. R.I.P. whatever the fuck, 2019 to 2019. Like, they were around for a year. Who gives a shit?
4 months or whatever.
They showed up. They printed 400 T-shirts. They sold them all. They played a fest. Then someone in the band got exposed for finger banging the wrong guy's girlfriend outside of the wrong fest, and it got onto the internet. And then they break up. And it's like, or just like, oh, our bass player has decided that he's going to move in with his internet girlfriend in Cincinnati, and we can't possibly replace a bass player, so I guess we're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's very like interesting too, where especially like right now, like there's definitely a lot of Winnipeg bands that are, they haven't been like, we're calling it quits. They're just like, yeah, like, I don't know, we're all kind of just doing different things right now. And I think that's way better than just being like you said, just making it a big, like, oh, I only want to play one more show if we're going to, do anything. Like, I think it's totally fine just to be like, hey, we're going to take a break for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool.
That's what like Locked In did. We didn't play a show for like 2 years, and then it's like, oh, we have like 2 opportunities this year. Maybe we'll pick it up again. But yeah, it's like, why make it such a big public event versus being like, yeah, we're just going to be on hold for a bit.
Yeah. Or it's just like, and then, you get back together a year later.
Right.
And you look like an asshole for making a big deal out of breaking up in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. If you really like hardcore and you like what you're doing, why wouldn't you just keep doing it? Mm-hmm. Seems like a pretty simple thing to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Going back to the band, you guys have definitely the activity of the band has definitely ebbed and flowed over the years. I remember, I think when I first started filming shows, I remember going on Hate56 and I saw that there was like one video of you guys from like 2012 or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, we played so bad that show or something.
Yeah, it wasn't a good show.
I'm trying to remember where it was. Like, I feel
it was
like
Chicago, and it was the Rumble.
Oh, okay. Oh, like OG Rumble.
Yeah.
Days. Cool. So definitely like for someone who maybe has only started listening to Withdrawal, within the last, let's say, like 4 years, like myself, what were some of the things that you guys were doing as far as like activity wise? Like, how often were you guys hitting the road?
Like now or then?
Well, yeah, maybe like a now and then.
Well, I mean, we covered a lot of ground as far as like, when we were kind of younger and could do it whenever we wanted, but I mean, like, that's also an era where and I think that era for a lot of hardcore bands is done, because like everyone just plays a fest pretty much, and like no one's like touring a lot. But like no, I mean, like when we were younger, I mean, I bought a van and I was like, well, let's get some use out of it. So like, we went to the States, 3 or 4 times. We went, drove all over Canada, both sides pretty much. Pretty much everywhere in North America except for like Alabama, I think we would have went to, or Florida too. We never made it. We never made it south or further south on the East Coast than Baltimore. But
gotcha.
No, we did a lot.
Didn't get to the tip of Florida.
No. I mean, I've been there. It's kind of sick, but I don't think at the time it would have been very receptive. I think that was around the time there was like that band like Frog Ball. Were they from Florida? Or like something to do with like alligator or gator or something like that.
Some kind of amphibian.
Yeah, no, there was some band back then out in Florida, and it was all like older dudes then. This is like 2007 or something like that. But but yeah, sorry, I'm totally rambling.
No, that's good. That's what you have to do on a podcast.
Yeah, I guess so.
I didn't have this written down, but we were talking a little bit about like the time we were like recording this. There's definitely like this resurgence of like mid 2000s like metalcore.
Yeah.
And you guys like since I've started listening to you, you've always had that like edge, but like not necessarily metalcore, but like that metallic hardcore style. So what is your, I guess, take on that? Do you think it's here to stay? Do you think it's kind of like on its way out, just kind of like scratching the surface?
Well, it's kind of it's again like hardcore is ebbs and flows, and one thing rises, one thing goes away. I mean, and it's like I think we're more of like a metallic hardcore band. Like we like metal and we like hardcore, whereas like I think a lot of bands doing that style now are just like full on influenced by metalcore. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's I was this is weird because I was actually thinking about this today, and that's probably because I'm a fucking geek and I think about hardcore a lot. But you do see other bands out there that are really like really draining that well dry, and all it takes is like a couple of like Judd reet panic chords, whatever people call
panic chord.
It was just, here's the thing, I'm old, so it's like when I was old or when I was a kid, people were calling it like Judd reet.
Oh,
you know
okay.
what I mean? Or reets. They were calling them reets, right?
Yeah.
And that's like a generational thing maybe, but it's like, all it takes now is like, a couple of Judds, couple of reets, and it's like and then they kind of almost like steal that kind of like, I guess it's kind of a half late 90s, early 2000s kind of sound. But all I would like to express to people is that when you're listening to these bands, like when you listen to like any of those bands that are doing stuff like taking undying riffs, or like any of those like, or like Day of Suffering riffs, or like Poison the Well China parts or whatever. If they're doing stuff that's like heavily indebted to like late 90s, early 2000s metalcore, all I'm saying is like, don't fool yourself into thinking you're listening to Nirvana when you're listening to Silverchair. You know what I mean? Like, people were probably saying the same thing about fucking Puddle of Mud for a while, being like, oh, this is a fucking real return to form for that kind of sound.
Right.
And, don't trick yourself sometimes into thinking that, you know, a pair of Asics is a pair of Nikes. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah. I did a podcast like just yesterday with Lance out in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, and he was like, it's kind of, you know, like especially some of that you know, like the MySpace like metalcore, like Wrist Meets Razor or CU Space Cowboy, like that's also kind of make this like it every like a few years ago, if you were like throwing that on, like putting that on the aux cord, people would be like, what are you listening to, man?
Yeah.
But nowadays, like you see their live videos and people are just like going off like they would for any other major hardcore band.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to shit on Wrist Meets Razor or whatever names those bands have, because I mean, like, here's the thing though. It's like here's I think the main difference too now though is hardcore now is people are okay if you like that stuff. Back in early 2000s, if you listen to anything but the first Cro-Mags record, you're a fucking loser. Right. And it's like if you were listening to, you know, Poison the Well or It Dies Today or whatever, you're a fucking geek.
Mm-hmm. Whereas
now people are like, it's pretty, you're allowed to listen to that stuff. But at the same time, you're allowed to listen to that stuff and listen to Judge and listen to like Magnitude or listen to whatever, right? You know, or you can listen to Fury and you can listen to Jesus Piece,
right?
Stuff like that. And it's like, so people now I think are a lot more accepting, or like, you know, Buddy on drums for Wrist Meets Razor, like CU Space Cowboy,
Brian,
like he plays
in both bands,
Inclination, right?
And Inclination,
exactly, right? So it's
and Wicked Garden, and
he does a billion things, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, it's cool that he does more than just one style, because if you just point yourself into a corner where it's like all I like is like nail paint metalcore, you know, that stuff, then you're missing out on all this other stuff. And if all you like is like you know, Youth Crew Revival stuff, then you're missing out on some ridiculous breakdowns in metalcore. But it's like so yeah, I think now it's a lot different. Like now it's a lot more acceptable to listen to that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that you know, in the past, it was probably like people were still listening to that necessarily, but you know, when they go to the shows, they're like, okay, I can, out of my 20 band shirts, I can only actually wear 3, or things like that are more core.
Oh, you mean like back then?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But now it's like I could throw on whatever I want.
I remember in like 2003, a certain would-be shit disturber in Winnipeg Hardcore would be he'd look like back in the day, and I'm sure it's gonna come back. But such as the style was, people would wear like those kind of like white belts, and they would wear like studded belts.
Oh
like
yeah,
studded belt stuff.
Yeah, and
they would have like bandanas dangling out of their pocket, and he would go to shows, and he'd be running around snatching them out of people's pockets like a game of flag football. Right, and his term for these things was not a very PC
flag
term.
captured.
Yeah, it was like he was. It's full on picking on people when at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
and it's like, you know, but I don't think you see anything like that anymore.
Yeah.
But it's
like,
but it's the same thing. It's like you know, he was picking on metalcore kids, but I remember another would be never do well in Winnipeg hardcore and punk would go to like propaganda shows.
Okay.
And he'd grab someone's hat, like a white hat, because you know the propaganda type, like even though they're a really PC and left-leaning type in Winnipeg, their shows are all just like complete fucking, it's full of just complete clown shoes, like total like greasy, like the type of people who even though they're there to hear songs about you know, accepting homosexuality, they're the types who are like, you know, using non-PC words for people. Like it's like jocks.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, propaganda has a real big jock contingent in Winnipeg. But anyways, so you know the jock kind of costume where you have like, you know, baggy ass ratty, you know, red dragon jeans going into like big giant DC shoes, and then like
with the tongues out. Yeah,
Oakleys and like a dirty white RDS hat or something like that. So my buddy would like he would grab
Volcom?
He would grab their Volcom hat or whatever in the pit, put it on, and just try and mosh away. He would just grab these people's hats and just kind of skedaddle.
2-step through. Yeah.
Pretty much.
That That's an interesting thing. Let's spend some time on that. Just more so because I was talking with Lance about this too. It's kind of funny how things we talked about in his podcast.
Let me preface this by saying that I'm this whole entire time I'm probably getting that, like, you know, that look in like The Office where Kelly is just totally beat, and like it's a meme. You'll see it on the internet.
Okay.
But it's like she's got
I'll
like
put it up right
she's got
here.
like 1,000-yard stare, or she's like kind of like this. That's pretty much me this entire time as I'm like thinking like, oh, there's gonna be a lot of this that's gonna have to be edited out eventually. I'm like, I'm like locking eyes with Mike as I'm saying shit. And I'm like, I should probably pump the brakes on this.
Yeah.
But continue. Cut. But we're gonna have to edit a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's PC.
Yeah. Anyways, keep going.
No, I was just gonna say like something we were talking on Lance's podcast was just like not a few years ago, but maybe like 10 years ago, there was and I learned a little bit about this when I watched that Judge documentary.
Yeah.
Where it was talking about how, like, you know, people who are racist and things like that were like showing up at these hardcore shows.
Yep.
And then people were like beating them up and throwing them out. And nowadays, like, because that was a pretty normal thing for people of those, like, I guess like there's some things where there's like crossovers where it's like aggressive music with like aggressive culture in a way.
Well, I don't think any of those Nazis like any of the music. I think they just, at the time, they were probably just preying on vulnerable people, because it's like people, especially then, it's like you find people who are a little left to center of society, and maybe they're looking to find their own kind of way in life, and you can kind of like, you know, you can kind of trick them almost into being like, well, this is we'll be your friends. That's my guess, having not dealt with Nazis, thankfully, in Winnipeg. The only Nazi scenario I can remember in Winnipeg was Nazis getting beat up at like a career suicide Born Bad show, I think.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't there for this though, so it's all hearsay, but I know people were like throwing cinder blocks through their cars and shit.
Yeah.
They were from Brandon. Big surprise. But
shout out to Brandon.
Yeah, shout outs to Brandon.
Hopefully there's no
But no, I think like back to what you're saying, like as far as like Nazis at shows back then too, I think like a lot of it is just like if you see that video of like, because in that video of like Judge, like that documentary, I know which one you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The dude just gets his ass kicked or whatever because they dogpile him, and like you can see in that like that video used to be online where you could see how heartbroken they were on stage, and you could tell that like, oh, this is the show where Judge broke up right after because they were so fucked up over this. Mm-hmm. But anyways, yeah, I totally cut you off.
No, that's fine. Well, you were talking a little bit about like, you know, the Winnipeg hardcore scene and some of the characters of it. Well, and one thing, because I remember when I think I first really was getting into the Winnipeg hardcore scene, kind of like how you said, like you said you were getting into it late, and I think, yeah, like I can kind of attest that I probably did the same. Like I was 17, 18, like even later, like maybe 19. Because now I'm meeting people who are like getting into the hardcore scene. They're like, yeah, I've been like going to shows since I was like 15 or something like that.
Oh, well, let me preface this. So I was going to shows, but like you just didn't know about them. Because like, not to date myself, I'm fucking 35, people. So back then all you had was like posters around poles, or like, you know, maybe if you're lucky and you went onto like Yahoo or like Web Crawler and looked up hardcore punk Winnipeg.
Crawler? What's that?
There you go. You know? Shout outs to Web Crawler. But no, like you'd have to find like the Winnipeg punk message board or something like that, and then hope that there was like a show to go to. And like I remember, so I would go to like Reclaim the Streets. That was like a big, like a punk festival that they would do in Winnipeg. Okay. And it was usually a lot of like the kind of, you know, Black Pants, Back Patch, you know, shitty Infest patch on their like jeans, like kind of bands. Like it would be like, you know, Guns, Liquor, and Whores, or like Operation Death Kill, or like Bored Suburban Youth, or whatever the fuck. Like all these like weird bands, and or like Standstill. Standstill was one of those, like, but like and then you'd also get like, you know, Stand Strong or like Hollow Ground or First Strike would be playing it too, right? Right. But like I went to some of those shows at the Collective, but like, you know, I was pretty late to get to that. And it was like, you know, I'd go to like concerts. Like I remember going to like Hatebreed or something like that. And then like when you go to Hatebreed, then you see like, holy shit, there's like people here in Winnipeg who like the stuff that I like.
Right.
And I was like very sheltered living in like St. James, right? Because everyone in St. James is just a fucking shit heel clown shoe. Just a bunch of fucking greasy dudes who like fucking skate punk.
Right.
Right. So none of them liked hardcore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
that's interesting that you say, sorry to cut you off, just how even just like neighborhoods
it's regional.
had like interest in music.
Yeah, well, it's like you think Maples, and it was like Maples. There was like Steve Diobaldo, Mike Requima, who the fuck else? Like I'm sure those guys were probably the only guys in their high school who were like getting into that punk scene. And then like Dan Kay, John Mayo, those guys were in like Oak Bank or whatever the fuck it is, just outside of just outside of the city. Oakville, I don't know. But anyways, those guys and like Gavin and all those guys were all a regional thing. But then it's like,
like Gavin and Colton.
No. You're thinking different.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of my generation.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Crucial Gavin.
Yeah.
Not moshing Gavin. But it's like those guys were all buddies growing up, and then it's like you take all those people and then you give them a platform and it brings them all together, and then you get this weird mishmash, and it's like maybe all of those guys like brought like 2 or 3 friends, so for like a couple of shows 10 years ago there'd be a lot of people, but then eventually they start kind of like disappearing, people get into other stuff or whatever. But it's like those same people who got into it as a kid got into it when it was like St. James, the Maples, and like Oakville or wherever the fuck Mayo's from. It's like it all combined like fucking Megazord from Power Rangers and became Winnipeg Hardcore, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you touched on an interesting thing there, because like I'm 26 as of recording this, and you're 9 years older than me.
What did I tell you yesterday too, though?
What did you say yesterday?
You're like, oh, I'm 26, and I was like, hey, did you know that like
everything goes downhill
at 26
in your late 20s? Yeah.
Because people think it's 30, but that it's actually when you're 30, you're like, oh fuck, it's 26.
Yeah. I'm gonna probably make a clip with this clip when I'm actually 30. I'm like, just like
your metabolism's toast.
Off.
Like you're toast.
Yeah. But I'm losing my train of thought because
I keep rambling. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're just talking about how we're talking about Winnipeg Hardcore, and something that you've said to me at fests and online and things like that, how Winnipeg's always been a band or a scene that hasn't had maybe a surplus of bands, but we've had a lot of quality bands.
Yeah, totally.
So we'll get into that, but now I'm actually remembering my real question. What is, in your opinion, maybe the reason that people are getting out of like hardcore in general? Because for me, like I'm not looking at like, oh, at this age, I'm probably going to be too busy or like have something going on or whatever. And it's always pretty interesting when you meet people who are either playing in bands or, they're taking photos or doing something. And then it's like, you go to the next show and then they're not
poof.
there. And yeah, poof.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you've been around for a minute, so I'm curious on, like, I'm sure you have a couple thoughts on the why.
There's a bunch of different reasons why like people either like don't go to shows or stop going to shows, and it's like either it's like this guy doesn't like me and I don't like him, and then I kicked his ass, and then he doesn't want to go to shows anymore because it's a place where he got his ass kicked. Fair enough,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen to people. Or like, I brought my girlfriends to shows and she met a bunch of friends, and then we broke up, and then I couldn't handle the fact that my other buddy homie hopped me, and then they started dating, and then I freaked the fuck out and I stopped going to shows.
Right.
Or she stopped going to shows, or his fucking buddy stopped going to shows.
Right.
Stuff like that. Or like, there's, or like, oh, this band broke up, and then, turns out the drummer was just kind of hanging out with his friends, and then he doesn't want to, play shows anymore, right?
Sure.
Or like,
or he was only going to shows because he was playing shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or like, and then, at the end of the day too, it's like, it's technically not a fun style of music to be into. Like, we're weird for liking this stuff.
Yeah, that's
true. Because it's like normal people don't like Danger, and it's like normal people don't, their idea of moshing is like pogoing to like Pearl Jam and like
right
or something like that,
or going like buying a $100 ticket to sit
Green Day
in the back and just watch a show.
Yeah. And it's like they don't understand like people moshing their ass off and like people getting hit in the face and being like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or like so I think some people probably just get out of it because they either they're like, oh, okay, this isn't fun anymore, or their friends stopped going, or they were never they're a weak motherfucker and they never had it in them anyways. I think those are like excessive force lyrics.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But there is a lot of like the
turnaround.
Yeah. Well, turnaround is one thing. But like Insecurities is kind of like the theme of what you first said. Like, oh, I dated this girl and then we broke up and I don't want to see her because I don't like how it makes me feel.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, like it's fine.
Well, and that's the thing. Like at the
probably
time,
get over it.
At the time, if I've been through it where it's just like you date someone and then you break up or whatever, or like you hang out with someone and it doesn't work out, and then it's like, oh fuck, they go to shows too. But it's like, you know what? I like going to shows more than I like, or more than I hate being awkward around someone. You know, and it's
and I think that's the thing where it's like your love of the music and the scene exceeds all other bullshit associated with it.
Yeah. And if I stop showing up, then and they keep going, then they win. So I'm again stubborn.
Yeah. So let's switch back. We were chatting about the bands of Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me some of your because I feel like Winnipeg. I was saying this at the show that we played, is that like Winnipeg is definitely a spot that's been overlooked by a lot of tours, past and present, just because of where we're geographically located.
Yeah.
You go south, you have to cross the border, and then the next major city is Regina, 8 hours away.
Yeah.
So what are some of like the, tried and true like Winnipeg hardcore bands, past and present, that you really fuck with?
The one that blew my mind open was Hollow Ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one was like, still like I still listen to those records, and it's like, and they were doing it, and they were like they did some touring, and they put out a record on Organized Crime, but man, like those song structures and like Avrinder's riffing, and like Jeff sounded so pissed off, and Teeny was so good on drums. No, that band, like I remember seeing them and being like, oh, this is exactly what I like, because like they sound like Buried Alive with a bit of Hatebreed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when you see some, like, I was like 18 or 19 when I saw that, and I remember being like, this is fucking exactly what I like for like bands, and they're doing this locally. I can go see this like once a month.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
so was that kind of like your like the switch flipped?
Well, no, it's even before Hollow Ground, I like Stand Strong, and that was like the pre-Hollow Ground band.
Oh, okay.
Like Jay from The Handsome Daughter?
Yeah.
He sang in Stand Strong.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's sick.
Yeah.
I'll show you some of it after. Yeah. But like that was definitely the band like for locally for Winnipeg. That's the top band. Like I can still listen to that, and I still tell people to check it out. And like other Tried, Tested, and True bands, like this is a deep cut, but Aim for My Head.
Okay.
Were around for a while, and they kind of did almost like a Bane style, kind of like fast, hard but catchy kind of hardcore.
Sure.
They were around for a while, and but then they all kind of disappeared, right? I still see the singer every now and then. He runs like a brewery now.
Oh.
Apparently.
Do you know which one? I guess that doesn't matter. Not
exactly tapped into the beer scene.
Well, let me tell you about the special.
Yeah. But no, they were good. Are we just talking like just deep cuts, or are we just talking?
No,
like good
well,
ones?
you can shout out, current.
Yeah.
Or some bands that you're like secretly wanting to come back and play a show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like
Extract.
Everyone busts hope on that one.
I know.
They're like, oh man, Extract's so sick. No, I mean like as far as like other Winnipeg bands that were like, as far as like hardcore goes, like check out like Gen X. I mean, Gen X or Faker Scum. I mean, they're all kind of like doing the same thing. they're gonna hate if I said that, but it's like, you know, any just
they're probably not gonna listen.
Oh, definitely. The Gen X guys will be like, well, actually, we're influenced by this, and then like the Faker Scum guys will be like, well, actually, Kawakami, blah blah blah. That's
well, then they can come on the podcast. And
no doubt.
Their
but like
band.
you know, like you know, any of the like, you know, Microquima's bands are always pretty good. So they're good. That's like a current thing, and they still do stuff. Who else is good? Yes, again, I keep saying Stand Strong. Stand Strong was really good. Yeah, I mean,
what are your thoughts on like arguably the band that put like Winnipeg Hardcore?
Burn Your World. Man, Burn Your World is like, man, I rode hard for Burn Your World, and like, you know, I told Mike Phillips, man, put out this band's record, like they're awesome, they're sick, and I wish they had done a bit more. But that's the story of being a band from Winnipeg, right? Like, you know, eventually the wheels come off and it's too hard to get in the States, and then, but Burn Your World, fuck those. They never stopped putting out like bad records, and like each record got better and better. In fact, they don't, like, how many bands get harder? They kind of went the same route, oddly enough, as Foundation.
Yeah.
Where if you listen to Foundation's earlier stuff and then like the later stuff, that last record is like, man, you could tell they're going through some shit. And that last
and a lot of the newer stuff is definitely influenced by Foundation a lot more.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, they kind of. It's weird. I mean, Foundation only broke up a couple of years ago, and I feel like they're almost already erased from history. I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, but you know, you don't see people with Foundation shirts or anything anymore, right?
Well, I've seen a couple people. That is really weird though. Like, I was just thinking of how there's always like, I don't know how if it was like this in the past where a band would break up and it was like, oh yeah, I'm never going to see this band again. And then like 10 years later, something would come around. Cause recently there was all those, Have Heart releases, and people were like, I never thought I'd be able to see Have Heart. I would only be able to see it on video or whatever.
I've managed to be at Have Heart shows like 4 or 5 times in my life. Right. And I never bothered watching them anytime. I think I watched like a little bit, at like Sound and Fury 07 maybe. And then like, when they played in Winnipeg, like they played in Winnipeg, and like there was just like astronomical amounts of people here. Like people drove from like Calgary and Edmonton to see them.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
I remember being like, I bought tickets to the show, and I went, and for whatever reason, like they didn't have a sound guy, and they're like, oh, well, can you set it up? And I set up like the sound for them, and suddenly I'm like doing sound at a show I already paid money for, right? And I remember by the time Have Heart was going on, I was like, oh, fuck this. I'm going to go to like, you know, I'm going to go to the corner store and grab a drink. And apparently like I left, and like the singer from Have Heart was like, where's the sound guy? Where's the sound guy? Because his voice was either getting roasted or that's a good one too. Cause, Born Bad opened that show. Okay. So picture Born Bad playing with Have Heart. And apparently I want to say that like Microquima said something like, take a look at what a real fucking hardcore band looks like, or something to that effect. But that was a fucking good one. It was them, Shipwreck, Bitter End, maybe Cruel Hand, maybe.
Oh yeah.
But that was a fucking wild one.
Yeah.
I mean, I sound like I'm pooing on Have Heart, but like at the same time, every now and then I'll show people like the video of like that their first last show.
Yeah. And
being like, this is a perfect last show for a band, and I respect the fact that they donated all the money to like a women's shelter.
Was that the one where it was at it was like 2008 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a New Bedford women's shelter benefit they did, and it was like, you know, 6,000 people or something, which at the time was an astronomical amount, but then they did that show like a couple of months ago, and it looked like...
Oh, and then it was in a parking lot, and there was like 10,000 people? Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah. It was like, I heard that people were like being pulled out because they were collapsing because they were so like heat exhaustion. Yeah.
Probably.
They were like moshing in like 100 degrees like Fahrenheit or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you handle the mosh, and sometimes the mosh handles you.
Very true. You know, wise words.
Yeah.
Put that in quotes. Maybe just like kind of wrapping up here.
God, I'm literally replaying all this already in my mind, being like, this is horrifying.
It's like this hour-long podcast is going to get cut down into like 20 minutes.
Yeah, probably. Honestly,
content.
No joking. Again, cut.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, oh man, we got to cut a big section of that. So I don't mind doing as much as you can so that to try and fill in the gaps, because I think the whole portion, a lot of those portions will have to be cut.
Right.
Or I dare you to just be like, just play like the beep sound, like the beep.
Oh yeah.
Just for like for like a good minute and just like cut it in and out. That'd be
Isn't
pretty
there
fun.
that you sent me that because I filmed Withdrawal.
The interlude for
the
Kid
interlude.
Gorgeous,
Yeah, for everything. I was just like,
yeah, that's a good one.
You're known for doing your Mosh Reports.
Wow, what an honor.
What goes into that? What goes in when you sit down and stretch out those fingers?
Okay, so the Mosh Reports is usually pretty much when there's like a
heavy hitter.
Yeah, when there's a
gig.
show and I go to it and like enough stuff happens that I can remember it the next night. You know what I mean? Like if it's just an average show, like if it's like I think a band called Offsides played here at the Death Trap once.
Okay.
From Florida, I think.
Sure.
Couldn't remember a damn thing about it. So no Mosh Report for Offsides because
Dang.
it's like it was just so wholly average that I can't really, you know what I mean? But no, like I think it's just kind of like something stupid. Like first off, you know, I happen to work a straight job where I can sit at my desk and sit in my office and just kind of type whatever, and no one's really watching over my shoulders. So
Right.
I get a lot of my work done when I should be working. But no, it's just like if something funny happens, or like you know, say someone like Mosh is really hard at a show, and like you could tell they're just like they were practicing their finishing moves in front of the mirror and stuff like that, and you know they're going hard.
If Nintendo picked me up and put me in Smash Bros.
Yeah.
Someone take notes.
If someone's doing like their down forward smash and like stuff like that, chances are I'm gonna put them as the worst mosher.
Right.
Whereas like, you know, if like Laura shows up and like someone moshes into her and as she fell back spilt a drink on someone or something like that, that would somehow be the top mosh of the night and be like,
okay.
Laura was moshing so hard that she fucking threw a drink all over people. Or like something stupid like
Out of
that.
spite.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right? Or like, you know, I'll just, you know, make up just stuff like that. Or like there's an unwritten rule that anything involving Alberta is automatically disqualified from the Mosh Report.
Right.
Like if there's, you know, it's just.
And do you want to dig deeper into that on this podcast?
Well,
set the record straight.
If we really wanted to dig deep into Alberta hardcore, you know, we probably have about 3 minutes I could talk about. You know, that should cover the extent of Calgary hardcore. Nah, I'm just fuck with it. Nah,
Yeah.
we don't want that. You know, nothing but love for my friends in Alberta.
Yeah.
But
this is all it took. It took you just to get on a podcast to have your true feelings about Alberta and Cody, and
we should have had this it's like one of those like
you're gonna send me a video of you being like, no, throw this in,
yeah.
And you're just like, fuck you guys.
Well, no, there's like it'll be like you know, when on like Funkmaster Flex or something like that, when like one rapper's beefing and like the other one calls in and they either squash it or they just start, you know, picking at each other.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Cody to pop in here in a second now. But.
Who's that? Comes through the door.
Yeah, oh
Yeah.
Fuck. Hey man, what's up?
I heard you were beefing on me, so I flew from the UK.
Yeah, squash this shit.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to talk briefly, and then we'll wrap up, just about playing in a band with your brother. How was that? Just like we're both into this music. You're in the same house as me.
Nope.
You're the easiest person to bring in.
Well, it was like okay, so growing up, it was probably around like 13 that me and Joel both started getting into like music or whatever.
Sure.
Much to our parents' chagrin, because like my dad's like a generic hockey newfie.
Okay.
And he's probably he'll never admit to it, nor do I care what he says. I'm sure he'll never accept the fact that his kids didn't grow up to be like mustache having, skidoo driving hockey guys. You know what I mean? Like, or like outdoor guys. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not an outdoors guy. Not a big fan. But you know, around 13, we started getting into like hardcore and punk, or just like music in general. You know, suddenly you start listening to music, and like, but the thing is, you know, my brother's my twin brother, right? So when you're growing up, you know, when you're like 3 years old, and they're like they're dressing you alike, you had like matching stuff. Like, there's tons of embarrassing photos of us dressed alike. But then
which
like,
you'll send me after.
Oh,
this.
certainly.
Yeah.
But then like later on, like when you start kind of developing your own identity, you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, if Joel likes this, I gotta like this. I can't like it. You know what I mean? Like if Joel likes this, if Joel likes vanilla, I'm gonna like chocolate. If Joel likes skate punk, I'm gonna like, you know, metal. And
okay,
it kind of started
interesting.
going like that. And
Yeah.
it really took until we were probably like in our early 20s before we started liking similar bands, to be
Right.
honest. I think the first band that we both, the first two bands that we both started liking, either one was Shai Hulud by coincidence, probably. And then the other was like, I got Joel into like the Smiths. And then, but then as far as like being in a band with Joel, it's like, I'm sure like some of the other dudes in the band would probably find it, we could probably get pretty insufferable at this point. I think Mike's probably cool with it because Mike's buddies with us both.
Right.
Obviously, and I think more so than that, like me and Mike are usually on the same page with what to do with the band. But like I'm sure like some of the other guys who were in the band would probably get pretty chapped because it's like if you're voting where to eat after a show, you already know that me and Joel are going to probably vote the same thing or go with each other on it. So you know what I mean?
But that's an interesting thing that you shared because something that for someone who doesn't know you is that you're straight edge and Joel isn't.
Yep.
And like another difference is like Joel's married and has a kid and you're not married.
That's true. Ladies.
Ladies.
The legion of ladies that listen to a hardcore punk podcast from...
You're going to send this video to all the people you match with on Tinder?
Perfect. Oh, God.
You want to get to know the Dyson.
No, I keep the hardcore stuff pretty low.
Yeah.
I just like music. I don't tell them.
Yeah.
They find out the hard way that I'm a mosh mutant.
But was that a reason that you wanted to be straight edge? Did that come before?
No, okay. So like, again, to date myself, I remember being a kid and watching like one of those like PSA kind of cartoons or whatever, where it's like don't do drugs type of thing.
Yeah.
Featuring like the Ninja Turtles, the Muppet Babies, Transformers, all that stuff.
Right.
The Gummy Bears, whatever. And like it was all about
the gummy bears.
Yeah. It was all about like it was
the Ford weed gummies.
It was like maybe I don't know. I don't think Bucky O'Hare made an appearance, but Bugs Bunny was in it, and it was called like Cartoon All Stars or something like that. And I'm sure it's on YouTube. Look it up. But it's like being like 4 or 5 and watching that and being like, drugs are bad.
Right.
And then like growing up and like, I had a parent who had problems with booze and drugs and everything, and being like, even starting like when you're a kid and you don't even realize the extent of it, but it's like, oh, he smokes a lot of cigarettes. I'm never gonna smoke cigarettes.
Sure.
I think like all the targeted ads for cigarettes and booze and all that stuff actually worked on like me. I'm the one person that they worked on.
Sure.
But so like as a kid, I already had it instilled pretty deep in my brain where it's like I'm never doing drugs. I'm never doing any of this stuff. And then like I probably only ever drank like maybe like the neck of a beer. Like for sure about like this much of a moose head that my dad had in the fridge or whatever.
Right.
And then
your dad drank a beer and then put it in the fridge.
Yeah, literally as I said
That's
that, you probably catch it in the video. You probably see me be like, "What the fuck?" in the back of my head thinking about it. But yeah, like I remember drinking his beer or whatever, or part of it, and then just being like, "Man, not for me."
Mm-hmm.
But and then I remember just like suddenly it's like you turn like 14 or 15. I was 15, and like you start listening to like Minor Threat, and you're just like, holy fuck, like these guys are singing about stuff I'm already feeling. This makes sense to me now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it didn't take its hold on Joel, but that's what worked for me. And then another thing is like seeing Joel's friends getting drunk and then like passing out and like pissing themselves, or like fucking they'll be like, oh fucking Schmiggly Pete fucking got too wasted at a party and he fucking lost his shoes, so he fucking walked home to his parents' place with no shoes on in the middle of fucking winter.
Right.
Or like, so-and-so got his driver's license and like 2 weeks later, oh, he lost his driver's license because he got a Dewey or whatever. All that stuff like totally like, kept me away from ever being into that stuff.
Yeah. And
whereas Joel, Joel's always a bit more social of a person. Like it's weird because he's a bit more forward with people. Whereas I'm a little, I'll kind of like wait to speak my piece, or like I'll kind of like, if I have a problem with someone, I'll probably try and squash it, or like I'll try, they can exist in their orbit and I can exist in mine, and it's fine. But whereas my brother, if he's got a problem with someone, he'll fucking let him know. Like he'll walk right up to him and be like, fuck you, motherfucker, what's going on? Which is really funny. But but yeah, at the same time, like he's more social with people. So he would go to parties and I'd stay home and play Final Fantasy or something like that.
Sure.
So, but then no, as far as like, and then suddenly, I played in 1920, which didn't have my brother in it. And then Joel played in like, he played in some like kind of like skate punk bands. Like one was like 2 for $25, and he played in a band called Krang, which was kind of like a bad attempt at thrash metal.
Okay.
I think it was probably more sloppy punk than thrash metal, as much as Joel would probably try and tell you otherwise.
Are bad thrash bands sloppy punk bands?
Ooh, probably right. Yeah, bad thrash is probably like bad crossover is just punk.
Right.
But yeah, so then we started a band. I don't know. I didn't even know how we got on the topic. We started a band called Ramirez before Withdrawal.
Right.
And like Joel played in that.
Yeah, that's what you said at the beginning.
Yeah, and Steve played in that. It was Joel, me, Steve, Jay Evaristo, and then this kid, Al. And then like Mike played in it for a cup of coffee. And then like Jeff played bass actually for a little bit too.
Oh, okay.
Before Steve. And then that broke up, and then we started a band or whatever, and then we started Withdrawal. But it's like I think a lot of it's just like we have very, very much like a lot of the same goals as far as music goes. Mm-hmm. And I think Joel definitely has more of a mind for like crossover and like thrash riffs. And then I have a mind for like the weird stuff. Like anytime there's like weird stuff in Withdrawal, a lot of it is maybe me trying to get stuff going with it.
For sure.
If it was up to Joel, there'd be like it'd be mostly fast parts.
Right.
But actually nowadays, the stuff that we're writing now, Joel's very much into like, hard shit, like
right,
like tough guy
the
shit.
fight riffs and the breakdowns.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Cool.
Like night ruining riffs is what we were calling them. It's like the type of thing where it's like you bring your girlfriend to the show and you're like, she's like, oh, I want to go see your show. I want to support you. Baby, you probably shouldn't come. And then like, 5 minutes into it, she gets hit in the face during one of the riffs, during one of the songs, and like
those are the kind of riffs you're writing.
Yeah, her teeth are knocked in, and like you got to spend the rest of the night at like the ER, So we're trying to put a bunch of riffs that are just gonna wreck people's nights, essentially.
Cool. And as we wrap up, maybe that's something that you can end on. What's Withdrawal coming up? What's Withdrawal coming up? What does Withdrawal have coming up? What are you guys working on? This podcast might not be out for a few months yet, so if you want to tease something.
Well, Withdrawal is well known for
taking its time.
Yeah, taking its time and everything. So I don't think it's going to be out in a couple months, but we're riffing. Like we're working on a lot of stuff. We got some new guys in the band, and we're just kind of like laying kind of low at the time. I think like I feel bad actually, and that was probably a good time for me to be like, hey, sorry about not playing like the scoped show.
Oh no, that's fine.
Because like we're just like
this is why I confront you. Just kidding.
Listen up. No, like we're just like really focused on writing right now, and we're probably gonna like I'm trying to gauge Mike's look right now to see how much of the curtain to peel back, but I think the general consensus is doing another LP and then some. Right. Like we're gonna do a lot of stuff, but you're not gonna hear about it until it's ready to go. You know what I mean? Like you guys like to,
make sure all the I's are dotted.
Yeah,
and T's are crossed.
we've never been the band to like just put out like whatever. Like if we've got so many unreleased songs that are like we played once live and then we never played again, and then like we never recorded it. Mm-hmm. Or like we've written a full song and then just like, because it's like there's a lot of bands that you'll see them like put like, oh well, the next 10 songs we write, that's our LP,
right?
And like then they front load all the good songs at the front of it, and then the last couple songs all suck ass. And it's like maybe we didn't put out as much music as some of the other bands. We're never really putting anything out that sucks,
right?
Like so slow and steady. Certainly, hardcore's a marathon, not a race. We're gonna come up with some new stuff, and I think it's gonna fucking pretty much
ruin your night.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And no one's gonna have a happy time with the new stuff. Like,
right.
There's a conscious effort with a couple of ideas where we're like, it's gonna be it's for sure. I mean, people say this all the time. They're like, oh, it's the darkest, heaviest stuff we've ever done.
Right.
And then it comes out and it's like all singing parts and bullshit. Like this for sure is gonna be like, it's gonna be like jumping into a sewer, because it's no matter how many times you take a shower after listening to it, like you're gonna still feel filthy.
Right. How can people keep up with you online? Do you have a mailing list?
Well, I mean, Withdrawal is probably most active on Twitter.
Sure.
And even then, that's like a once in a little while thing, because we're not in like full on withdrawal mode right now. Like we're just writing. I feel weird plugging my own Twitter.
Well, just do that. Massive mistake.
Yeah, it's massive. I think it might be heinous blunder on Twitter.
Different for every platform.
Well, no, I did that because I needed to dodge my work.
Oh, I see.
Because one day I go into work on a Monday, and my boss comes up and he's like, "Massive mistake." And I was like, what?
You're like, oh
and
no.
Exactly, right? Like I could literally feel my soul leaving my body. So I was like, he was like, oh, isn't that like your name on Twitter? Or he's like, isn't that your name on Instagram? And I'm like, yeah, I think I got Instagram, but I don't use it. I don't really use it. Like I think I signed up for it, but I never use it. And thankfully, I was already private on there. But
Twitter,
immediately at Twitter, I was like, gotta vamoose this, because Twitter's a no man's land. I'm sure anyone listening to this knows it, especially hardcore Twitter.
Yeah,
it's like literally people I've met like 3 or 4 times. I've seen them buck ass naked, and it's like, or like I'll be scrolling through Twitter, and it's just like I'm keeping up on like music or like friends and like professional wrestling and stuff like that, and then it's like boom, a picture of like someone from like New England with sperm all over their face, and they're like, sign up for my OnlyFans, and it's like, holy fuck, I don't need to see this. I'm scrolling this at work. You know what I mean?
You're like, well, I did not see that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, funny story about that.
Okay.
So usually my go-to move, if I first off, let me say this, that like I'm very anti-internet talk on stage when we're playing. There's nothing worse than someone being like, yo, this song's about the fucking some people talking on the internet, and this next song is it's a new single we just put up on the internet. I can't stand it, right? But as far as the internet goes, where was I going with this? So my usual trick when like people like post like particularly graphic or things that would potentially get me fired or something like that, or just like shit that you don't want to see when you're on like on a bus and you're scrolling through, and then you see some dude getting his dick sucked at a fest or something like that. So like, I'll block those people, right? Rather than mute them, I'll just block them, right? And I remember going to like a festival in like in Northeast United States a couple of years ago, and this friend of mine was like, yeah, my Airbnb is a couple of blocks away, and I'm just hanging with I don't know what her name is. I'm just hanging out with Samantha for the next like day or two. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Samantha's a fill-in
name.
Yeah,
Samantha. I don't know what her real name is, and this ties in the story. She's like, well, it's not like weird. I'm like, what's weird? Well, that I'm hanging with Samantha. No, why? Well, she I know you have her blocked on the internet and she was telling me it's because maybe like a decade ago she was talking to your ex-girlfriend online, and like you guys had problems with each other, and like I don't want things to be weird. I'm like, I don't fucking know who Samantha is. So this girl must have been like walking around this fest thinking that I'm like, that I was like shooting daggers through her face with my eyes, or like had problems with her. But in reality, the only times I ever block people on like the internet is like because I'm like, man, I don't want my boss seeing your shit cutter.
But that's a lesson.
Yeah.
Never block, mute, because then
you
don't see anything,
exactly,
but then they don't get those notifications.
Yeah, and like I think I noticed I was blocked on Twitter by like a record label that I own records from.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of weird. And I was like, what did I do? But it's like, I certainly wasn't posting my delicious, voluptuous ass on Twitter for people to see. But so yeah, it's kind of weird. But yeah, like I guess it is kind of weird when like I guess I could see her point where it'd be weird in that sense.
Sure.
Though people a generation younger than me take the internet a lot more serious.
Right.
So I could see it being weirder for her if she's at a fest and she's like, oh my god, there's that big ugly dude from Canada, and oh my god, we've got beef. It's like, no.
Well, regardless of how much you do on the internet, search Withdrawal. You guys have stuff that can be bought through Escapist.
Kind of. Because there was that flood and a lot of that stuff got damaged.
Oh, shit.
So I'm proud to say that all of our records are pretty much out of print. So like, we'll never be that band where there's like 400 records in our friend's closet for the rest of life.
Right.
But at the same time, like, a flood did destroy like 60 records of ours or something.
Well, whatever you can find, definitely go support them. Excited to hear new shit come out. Thanks again for being able to sit down with me finally.
Thanks for having me on this, and like the amount of thing, like
we'll have to go back and forth.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to get out the scalpel on this one because.
Can I overdub this entire?
You know, there was one more thing I was gonna say too. Fuck, what was it?
You make it quick because boys got to bounce.
Yeah, it was about. Damn it! It was about. Oh yeah, metalcore.
Yes.
Yeah, very quickly. You can edit this around to see if you can seamlessly put in this. This ties into what I was saying, where I'm like, when you're listening, you're not listening to Nirvana, you're listening to Silverchair type of thing.
Right.
Which is in itself is a dated reference because that's old.
Right.
Old people music, right? Classic rock at this point to a younger kid. But when you see some of like the newer bands coming out and they're ripping off their entire sound from something that's already been done, or they're ripping off their entire look from something that's already been done. And it's like, it borders almost on parody. Right. You know what I mean? And that's when that stuff doesn't get too interesting. Like, anyone listening to this playing in a hardcore band, just write whatever you want to write. Don't rip off anyone's like style, look, riffs, or whatever. Like, just do what sounds good to you. And in the long run, like, yeah, maybe you won't be popular for a flash, like a lot of bands that kind of do what's popular do. Like, you see a band that sells a shitload of t-shirts, and then like they break up, or like, and then suddenly like a year later everyone's trying to sell their shit on Depop or whatever, right?
Right.
So just write what you want to write, and don't just please stop making t-shirts and albums that look like bad late 90s metalcore records, because a lot of those records are awful looking. That's, and like, anyways.
Yeah. And that's a great place to end. Thanks again for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on it.
No problem.
Increase the grease. Shout out to the Big Mans, a clandestine group spiraling across Western Canada, if they hear this. And then, thanks for having me. I'm very sorry for anyone who listened to this and expected anything intelligent or rewarding. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Bye.